Hey everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 989. I had the white pieces and started off with d4. My opponent went d5. I went c4, the queen's gambit, and he played knight f6, the martial defense to the queen's gambit. So this is just not a very good line for black, although you have to play precisely here if you want to take advantage of it. So if you just play knight f3, you'll get into a normal queen's gambit position, and it's nothing special. If you want to prove an advantage to white here, you have to take the pawn first, and then after he takes back, typically they take with the knight there. You can do similar kinds of things if they take with the queen. Takes with the knight, you're tempted to play e4 right away, but that's actually not the best move. So you play e4 right away. The knight just drops back to f6, so you've gained a tempo. But while this pawn is under attack, you can either push it forward or defend it. But the idea here is that, well, if you push forward, it's not possible. But if you defend it, which is kind of the normal move here, black has the move e5. And if you take the pawn, black will trade queens. And regardless of what white does here, black gets some kind of playable position out of it. So it's just not that accurate to play the immediate e4. What you do is you play knight f3 first. And the way to remember it is you're just preventing black from playing e5. So if black plays e5, you want to be able to take with the knight, so you don't have to take with the pawn and open up the line of the queens. And there's no particularly good answer for black here. He just played e6. G6 is the most common response here, going for kingside fianchetto. If he plays bishop f5, the best response is knight bd2. You want to renew that threat of playing e5. And then actually the e4, rather, forking the pieces. And actually the best move for black here is to drop the knight back. So you've gained a tempo on the knight in any case. You didn't have to play e5. You're probably not going to get, e4. You didn't play e4 in this line, but you did gain a tempo on the knight because the knight came forward to take a pawn and then it went back, and you've got a developing move in. So in every line, white comes out better here. Let's see. He just played e6, and now you can play e4 safely. The knight's going to have to move. He threw in the check. That's probably not best. This helps me out a little bit because once again I'm developing a piece, and I still get to bring my knight out to this good square here. So his knight just has to move. And let's see, yeah, when he did the check, we're just out of the opening book after that. So we'll just look at the notation page here. The knight finally has to retreat. There's no more tricks, so he went to b6. So I played knight c3 here. He castled. Went bishop e2, and he played c6. c6 is another slight mistake. The first one was choosing to play the martial defense, and then knight c6 is a little more active here. That's probably what he should play, try and get some pressure on the d-pawn, which after all, he's got the queen looking at it. He can bring the knight out to look at it, and he's got this pawn restraining it from moving forward. So that's a little something for black to try for, but white is much better in all of these lines. c6 just builds this light-structured, light-squared pawn structure that keeps his bishop hemmed in, so it's just not good. I castled. He went knight to d7, gradually getting his pieces out. So let's just go forward some moves here. It's just kind of a long game, and no big mistakes on this part. We get some normal development, a little bit of dancing around the d file. He was looking for opportunities maybe to play c5 or e5 to try and open things up. So you just have to be aware of those possibilities and try and prevent it. And now I make the first mistake, or it's not a huge mistake, but it's not the best move here. Knight b5. It's interesting. I mean, it's always tempting to play these moves and look to get into a good square here. But he had a nice counter to it. So what should I have played? There's different things I can try here. Queen to g3 was good. f4 was another suggestion. That looks pretty nice, getting that big pawn center there and just build up for the king side attack here while his pieces are shut in on the queen side. So all this is leading to a big advantage to white. So knight b5, not so much, but he had to play queen to b8. I think I mentioned this during the game. Queen b8, it's a funny looking move. You know, it's not a move black wants to play, but it is keeping an eye on the d6 square, keeping my knight from hopping it to d6. And he can unravel from here. I guess I probably just have to move my knight back. So, you know, it's a wasted tempo for me. But he didn't go that way. It's still better for white, by the way. But this gives me the big advantage back. So I play my knight into d6. That was the plan. Played rook f8. And now I wasn't quite sure how to unwind from this position. And I was tempted by this knight takes f7 move. So this is technically a mistake, but you know, I considered this and I thought it was interesting, and it does still leave white with an advantage. So I think this is the kind of mistake you should make every now and then. You know, go for positions that have some kind of material imbalance. It's a great learning experience, and just see how well you can play this kind of position. So, but I could have played the knight back to c4. So, you know, I've done this weird maneuver with my knight where it went to b5 and then to, yeah, I guess it started on c3, right? It went from c3 to b5 to d6 and then back to c4. But it's all with tempo. It's hitting the queen again, and the knight supports this knight. So when he takes, if he takes, I can take back with a knight and maintain a good piece there. And this actually keeps a strong advantage to white. I might have played that if I had seen that idea. But between not seeing how I could easily unwind and just wanting to explore this possibility, I decided to go in for the sacrifice here. So I'm giving up two knights to gain a rook and a pawn. And from a material point of view, that's a loss. The rook and the pawn are stronger, are worth more than the two knights. But there are some other factors too. One is he's left with a weak e-pawn, and his king is a bit exposed. So you also have to take that into account. And in fact, white still has an advantage here. So I did not give up the edge. It just wasn't technically the strongest way to play. So I continued with bishop c4, looking at this pawn and maybe thinking to take advantage of it. And he went to queen c7. And so this actually was a mistake. If we back up, the way that black has to play this position, I mean, that's the other reason why you want to go for these unusual positions, is that your opponent sometimes has to be very precise just to get out of them alive. So the move knight to f8 is the move here that allows black to continue playing. Once again, it's a retreating move, but it's holding on to things, and black can gradually unwind, it appears, from this position. Maybe his king drops back and he slowly brings the bishop out. If he finds the opportunity to push that pawn forward at some point, which is not going to happen for a while because of the bishop pinning on that pawn, but maybe the king goes back here into here, and then he can push that pawn forward. Maybe he can slowly unwind like that and get into a playable position. But, well, queen c7 coming back to defend is a pretty natural move. And also taking a look at ideas like this, jumping and attacking. Doesn't actually work because I can defend with the queen, but I do have to be careful. It's looking for the counterattack here. But that's a blunder that loses. So queen f3 first, pinning the knight. Actually, e5 first was recommended by the chess engine, but queen f3, I follow up with e5. Goes knight to d5, and then I go queen to g3. My idea was, I thought he would defend that pawn or push it forward. My idea was to get to the h file here. In fact, the chess engine recommends king f8 and then queen to queen to h4. It's you know, looking at this dark squared diagonal to come in on, and then I'll bring up a rook and bring that over to harass his king. And in the meantime, I'm looking at this weak pawn, so it's gaining a tempo here if he has to defend the pawn in some way. So this is good for white as well. He tried knight to b6, hitting my bishop. And I just went ahead and grabbed here, thinking this was good, even if I lost the bishop. Maybe a bit of a miscalculation, but my bishop, it turned out, was defended. So he went king d8, and then I went queen f8. I didn't want to trade queens. King back to d7. Then I lifted my rook. This was my idea. I was going to lift the rook and bring it over and not worry about losing the bishop. So the chess engine, however, says the most accurate way to play this is to go ahead and take here. And there's some nice tactics here, so that I'd go through this. Queen g7 check. If he blocks with the knight, this loses very quickly. Although it's not so easy to see why, but what you do is you play d5, a very nice breakthrough kind of move. And you're threatening to push forward, forking the queen and the knight. The knight is pinned. So even if the queen moved away, you could play that move and win the knight. Play d6 to win the knight. So, and he doesn't want to take with the c-pawn, exposing the queen to the rook, so he has to take with this pawn. Then you have the very nice move e6 check. And things just fall apart here. Let's see, if he plays queen to d6, then you have this check winning the queen, because the queen's undefended there and the king can't go back. Let's see, if the king takes the pawn, then you've got the rook coming over with check, and you're grabbing the knight. So things just fall apart there. So after queen g7 check, he can't actually defend with the knight, and so he has to move the king back. Then you keep checking, pick up a pawn, and then finally, one more check to get the queen on the back rank, the king on the 7th rank, and then finally you lift the rook. And that's the most accurate play, and this is just completely winning for white. What I played is winning too, but not to the same degree. So let's see, I lifted my rook. Immediately he took the bishop, and then I played rook to g3. It's pretty obvious in retrospect, but rook to h3 was the stronger move. I mean, it's the same threat, threatening to come down to the 7th rank. But with the rook on h3, I'm also getting a pawn. Why not pick up a pawn while you're at it? Anyway, I went rook g3. He went queen d8. I came in with the check. So queen d8 was actually the best move there, and this check was the best response. And now he can play knight e7. So it was a pretty clever defense, because with the queen here defending the knight, also threatening just to trade off or take my queen, there's no great answer here, and I can no longer avoid the queen trade. And in fact, queen takes d8 is the only move in this position that leaves white with an advantage. You might think, I could try some maneuvering with the queen, but apparently black can escape from all of that unscathed. The chess engine gave it an even or a 0-0 rating. So this was the move that had to be played, and fortunately for me, this is a winning endgame. I get my piece back here, finish the trade. He took the bishop, I take back, and then let's see, played knight d5, and I took the pawn. So it's just 2 rooks against rook, bishop, and knight, but I have a bunch of extra pawns by this point, and this is just winning. I went ahead and traded rooks. I think this is a good way to simplify. The chess engine approved, so you've got 1 rook against the 2 minor pieces, and as the pawns come forward, get traded off and opened up, the rook just gets stronger and stronger. So this should be a win, but you do have to be careful. So I'm kind of moving things forward slowly here, but seems I didn't make any big mistakes. And here, in fact, he set up a little trap here where I could take the pawn. He could play this check. I step back and take the rook, and I take back. So he's got a knight and pawns against 7. He's got a knight and 3 pawns against 7 pawns. It turns out this is also completely winning for white. The knight is not going to be able to hold back all of those pawns. But, well, in a blitz game, short on time, it's easy to see how I might go astray here. So I think even the chess engine actually thinks that's the best play for white, to go ahead and take that pawn. But, I wanted to keep the rook on. Thought it would be easier for me to win in a blitz game. And I was not entirely sure that pawns versus knight endgame was going to be a win. So it's interesting to see that it was. Anyway, so now we get a bunch more moves, but I keep my advantage the whole time. Don't manage to fall for any of his tricks. He did get a pawn back there, but I did manage to hold on to the rest of the pawns and get them rolling on the king side here. And then he resigned at this point. There's no stopping this pawn from queening. And even though, he can move this knight with tempo on my rook, but I can once again move my rook. So yeah, there's nothing he can do to prevent that pawn from becoming a queen. So interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again soon. Bye.